All right, let's get down to the business of repotting. So we're going to put this Dieffenbachia or dumb cane in a new terracotta pot. It's in a small plastic pot that's just come from the store. And the important thing is to pick the correct sizing. When we repot, we want to make sure that we really just move up one size. We don't want to put a small plant into a giant new container, because what that does is actually all of that new rooting media that could be really good at holding water may actually trap too much moisture around these young roots. So we want to move them up slowly. So what we'll do is put just a little bit of media in the bottom of this new pot, and then make sure that it's about the right height and size for the plant that we're putting in it. Now, if this plant were highly root bound, we might need to do a little bit of root pruning. In this instance, all I'm really going to do is kind of loosen up the roots so they'll be ready to explore the new media as we plant. Then, of course, I'm just going to kind of fill in around this root ball that I just inserted in this new pot. So in this instance, we don't have to add a whole lot of media. We want to make sure not to fill all the way to the top, right? Because we want to leave a little bit of room for water to sit in this pot when we water it. And then we're ready to water in our newly repotted plant. Once again, make sure I put the tag back in it. Another example that we have right here is a new plant that has just been propagated. So this is actually a stem cutting that is a young plant that has just produced a few new leaves from some auxiliary buds that were on that stem. So once again, I'm going to put a little bit more media inside this pot because I want to make sure that it's just about the right height when I fill it up. And so because this is a much smaller plant with a smaller root ball, we're gonna need just a little bit more material. So I'm gonna put media around it, make sure to firm it. Now, not really tight, right? We don't want to pack it too tight, but we want to make sure that there's good contact between those young roots and the new media. Once again, make sure it's just about an inch lower than the surrounding pot, and we are good to go. The final container that I wanted to give an example of repotting here is this philodendron right here. This is a new plant that I'm just bringing home so we can see it's coming from the nursery. So I'm going to check its roots to make sure, of course, that they're of good quality, but also not too root bound. We can see it's not too root bound, so we don't really have concerns there. It's mostly that I want to put it in a new container. So once again, I'm going to have growing substrate that I'm going to add to the bottom of this container just a little bit. Philodendrons really prefer good drainage, so this is a mix that has a little bit of peat, but also quite a bit of composted pine bark. Another important thing that I wanted to mention while we were talking about this is I am actually putting new media in this repotting that is very similar to what the plant is already growing in. So we don't have a lot of difference between the current root media and the new ones. We want to make sure that we ease exploration from the existing root ball. And so I place it in the center of the pot, make sure that my height is about right, and then all I'll do is just add media right around the outside of this plant. Once I get done with this repotting, I'll want to make sure to water them in well, kind of get that media settled in good contact with the plants. Always make sure, if you're repotting right after they come back from a nursery or greenhouse, to make sure that you give them a little bit of time to adjust to their new growing environments. Lots of times there can be difference in light. Monitor moisture closely after repotting to make sure that you're not over or under watering in their new growing media, and your plants will be off to a great new start in their newly repotted containers.